This will be a walkthrough of the M365 Services Supplemental Management Pack version 2 setup. Now, the first order of business is to obtain the MP archive. We can locate the download link at monitoringguys.com, shown here. Now, I've already downloaded the zip, and it's located on my management server. This unsealed MP right here is to be used only if your license SKUs don't discover the display name properly. So we're going to skip that for now. As a general rule, you'll only import the MPs that you need and nothing that you don't need. Now I'll give the agents a minute to get those new management packs digested. And while that's happening, I'll straighten out my M365 requirements. So this monitoring solution leverages PowerShell to perform synthetic transactions to test functionality and measure performance of various M365 services like OneDrive, Teams, licensing, SharePoint Online, MailFlow, etc. The synthetic transactions are conducted through Microsoft Graph API, which is a RESTful web service that enables programmatic access to Microsoft Cloud Service resources. This access requires a registered app in Azure Active Directory, and that registration must be assigned specific permissions. Microsoft Graph exposes granular permissions that control the access that the apps have to resources, like users, groups, and mail. Microsoft Graph has two types of permissions, application and delegated. Now, it's important to understand the differences, but I won't get into that right now. You can read more about it in the MP guide included with this set of management packs. The steps to create the app registration within the Azure portal are spelled out in great detail within the management pack guide. But for your convenience, there's a script to automate the app registration for you, and I will quickly demonstrate the registration script. So here we can see the contents of the extracted management pack archive, all of my management packs, and here at the top is the SCOM app registration script. So I'm simply going to launch that, and I immediately see a notice on the screen here that tells me that I can expect to be prompted twice during this setup. Now this is the first, where I have to authenticate with my admin account to my Azure tenant. Now I need to select a name for my new app. I'm going to keep it simple. Call it SCOM Demo App Reg 1. Yes, it's correct. Now the application has been created and the permissions assigned, but I must now agree to the admin consent. So here's a list of all the permissions that are to be added to the app registration. I will accept those. And I'm redirected to the default page, which is just the Monitoring Guys website. But here in the script window, I can see the results of the registration. I can see the application ID, which I'm going to save over here in Notepad, and then also the secret. Now this secret will only appear once in this window. When I close this window, this is gone. I can never retrieve this again, so I need to make a note of this. Now if I ever lose this secret, I can always go into the Azure portal under the app registration properties, and I can create a new secret at any time. So it's not the end of the world if I lose this, but it sure would be extra work that we don't need. So I'm going to copy this off. So now that I've recorded my application ID and my client secret, I can go to the Azure portal and I can look under my app registrations, and under all applications I can see here is my new app registration. I can inspect the properties under API permissions, and I can see that all of the assigned and approved permissions, they match what is shown here in the management pack guide. So that's how I can verify that everything has been set up correctly and admin consent has been granted for all of them. In addition to the app registration, you will also need at least one M365 test account and a second account if you want to enable monitoring of Teams chat, which you do. So let's start with the first account. So here we are in the Microsoft 365 Admin Center. You can see the URL here is admin.microsoft.com. I'm already logged in and I have the active users window open, and it's really easy to add a user. The user I'm going to add is going to be SCOM Demo 1. And I'll just paste, paste, paste. And for password, so I need to assign a license. So I'm going to select my E5 license, and I'm going to be very specific about what I activate. The three licenses that need to exist for this test user are Exchange, Mail, Teams, and SharePoint. So I will find Exchange online. There it is. And then the next one is Teams, which is there. And then finally, SharePoint. So again, that's SharePoint, Teams, and Exchange Online. Next, no additional roles or profile info are needed. Next and finish. Super easy. So here I can see my new account, but now I need a second account, which is to become the chat partner for the Teams chat monitoring. So I'm going to basically rinse and repeat the process. And so for this second chat partner account, I'm going to select Teams only, because this is required in order to establish a chat session with this second account. Next, next, finish. All right, here you can see my two new accounts exist. Now the next step is I need to identify a Sharepoint site for the purposes of monitoring. So I'm going to create a new site which will only be used for monitoring, and I can find SharePoint over here. And I'll select active sites, and I can see some of my existing test sites, and so I'm going to create a new site, and the name that I'm going to give this site is going to be SCOM Demo Test Site 1. It will be a communication site, and up here it's important to understand the difference between the display name and the actual site name. Now the name of this field here is called site name within the administration area, but this is really the display name. And down here, this is the truly unique site name. So it's a little bit misleading. So I'm going to give this, for the purposes of the demonstration, I'm going to give it a nice display name, but I'm also going to take note of the true unique name. I'm going to add that over here to my notes. And so I need to give this a site owner, and I'm going to use the SCOM Demo 1 account that I set up earlier. Okay, there's my new site. Next, I need to identify a team channel to use for monitoring and make note of the team name and the channel name. And I can find the Teams admin area over here in the admin center. So I open up Teams. And I'm going to navigate to Manage Teams. And here I can see my existing teams. And for the purposes of this demo, I'm going to use this existing demo team. I could add a new one, but I've already got one here. I'm just going to use it. And I can see there already exists a member of this team. I'm going to ignore that for now. And I'm going to add my new SCOM Demo 1 user. There it is. Now he's a member of my team. And I'm going to make note of the team name, which is Demo 1. I'm going to write that down. And then also the channel that I want to use. So I'm going to use the general channel for my monitoring. So again, the team name is Demo Team, and then the channel is General. Now that my app registration, M365 users, and SharePoint site have been created, I can activate a Watcher node. I'm going to select two computers. a management server, and an agent managed machine. And we're going to use the Configure Watcher Node Default Settings task. Select Override. The required fields are tenant name, client secret, client ID, account name, and account password. And optionally, I can add a location. As you can see, I have the required information in the required fields, and now I can run the task. The configuration task will take the provided information and etch it into the registry of the watcher nodes. So once the task has finished, we can see a generous amount of feedback about what was written and where. I want to point out that each one of the configuration tasks for all of the M365 services includes an on-demand discovery event trigger. That means that the applicable discovery workflow, the watcher node discovery in this case, is triggered instantly when the task modifies the configuration data. So if we have a look at the watcher state view, the new objects should show up any second. That was pretty quick. Now let's take a look in the registry. So here in the registry, I can see the new key that was added for my tenant. The client secret and password get encrypted by whichever security context is executing the task, and they are stored as encrypted strings. We can see that here. On an ordinary agent machine, this is almost always run by the local system account. It would be super rare to use any other default action account. And on a SCOM management server, this is usually the operations manager action account, which is almost always a domain service account. So the data can only be unencrypted by the same account which performed the original encryption, and only on the same computer. So pretty much all of the M365 workflows use this data to interact with Graph API. These values are not only used for watcher discovery and watcher monitoring workflows, but many of these values are also used as defaults for the other services configuration tasks. What this means is that these values get inherited by the other services MPs. And I'll show you what I mean. Let's configure some services. I'll start with licenses. Notice the default values for authentication. If I leave these blank, the default values of the watcher node will be used for the license monitoring workflows. However, if for some reason I wanted to use an alternate app registration or alternate account credentials for the licenses monitoring, I could do so. This is not a very common scenario, but the option exists nonetheless. There are no overrides required here. I'll run the task. And upon completion, I'll check for instant discovery. Boom. Now my monitoring workflows haven't initialized yet, but they will soon enough. Oh, and there they go. You will notice under the new license key that there exists no authentication data. This is because I provided no overrides for the license configuration. I want the licensing workflows to use the default data located on the watcher object. When license discovery occurs, the discovery workflow will use the values if they exist under the license key. Otherwise, discovery will use the values of the watcher. The same is true of all other services management packs with the exception of MailFlow, which I'll demonstrate last. Next, we'll configure teams. I'll select both of my watcher nodes, and I'll launch the Teams configuration task. The required values for teams are the team name, which is demo team, channel name, which is general, and my chat partner address. And that's it. Here I can see the results. I can look in the registry and verify. And here's my team's data. Now I can go to the team state view. I can see that one of the watchers is being a little sluggish. There it is. Not too bad. Let's configure SharePoint next. Now the required field here is a SharePoint site name. And if I enter the SharePoint display name here, my discovery will fail. What's needed here is the actual unique site name. Included in this management pack is a task to help you identify the true site name. It's right here. It's search for SharePoint site name. So this will reveal the sites that my test account has access to. And I think I remember that my test site was called something demo, something or other test. So I'll just input test. This will show me any and all sites with test in the name. So here I can see there are 2 sites listed, the second of which is my demo test site. So the actual site name that I need to use is SCOM demo test site 12. So I can launch the SharePoint configuration task, override, and use that value for the site name. The task completes. Now I can go have a look at the SharePoint state view. There it is. Next, I'll configure services. I'll select only one of my watcher nodes. And there are no fields here that need to be overridden. So I'll simply run. And I'll go verify the state view. There they are. Next, we'll configure MailFlow. I'll select both of my watcher nodes and launch the MailFlow configuration task. So for MailFlow, you must explicitly provide the credentials for the M365 send and receive accounts, and optionally for your Exchange on-prem. Now, I don't have Exchange on-prem in my lab, but if I did, I would provide the Exchange EWS URL, both the send and receive account credentials, you could use a single Exchange on-prem account for both if you want. But like I said, I don't have Exchange on-prem in my lab, so I'm simply going to provide my M365 account info for both the send and receive, just to keep it simple. There are no other fields that need to be configured. Now let's go have a look. There we go. Now eventually, the state will populate. There we go. But in the meantime, just for fun, I can run a MailFlow test. Simply launch the MailFlow test task. Now this did a basic test from Azure to Azure. And we can see here that the email was sent and received successfully. And then I can see some statistics about the activity, the send duration, the receive duration, and the total duration. Next up is OneDrive. There are no overrides required for OneDrive. Now let's check the state view. There it is. Let's run a test task. Great. We can see that our file upload-download test was successful and exactly how long it took. Now, just for the sake of variety, I'm going to configure one of my Watcher nodes to use a proxy. There are detailed instructions in the Management Pack Guide about how to make the necessary edits to the XML file shown here. But I'm going to quickly demonstrate the Agent Proxy Management Pack, also available from monitoringguys.com. The way this management pack works is you locate the Agent Proxy Discovery, which is disabled by default, and you simply enable it for any members of your management group which might need to use the proxy. Now, the proxy will discover proxy instances, which are just basic SCOM objects that only have a few properties that represent the current proxy configuration of the agent. All they really do is provide us a target for which to run the proxy configuration task. Now, this task is just a super easy way to modify the agent's XML file, which is what controls the agent network behavior for HTTP traffic. So I'll configure this now in my lab. Now, I already have the SCOM Agent Proxy Management Pack installed, and I've already got the discovery enabled for my dev DB01 Watcher node. So we can see that it's discovered, and the proxy enabled value is false. So I need only run the configuration task and provide an IP and a port. So here I'll paste the IP and port of my proxy server. I don't need to include any bypass addresses, but if I did, I could add them here as well. So I'll run the task, and this will automatically restart the agent for me and begin using the new settings. Now, discovery will eventually run again, and these values here will update, but we're not going to wait around for that. We're going to go run a test task. Let's pick Teams. We'll run a channel test. Now let's first have a look at the proxy server. So I'll start the proxy, and I'll run my test task. Teams channel message test. So that's running, and let's go have a look at the proxy server. Here it is, successfully using the proxy. And there's my successful message test. That concludes the setup portion of the walkthrough, but I wanted to quickly mention the new PowerBi dashboards that come with the version 2 Management Pack bundle. The Management Pack Guide includes instructions for the PowerBi desktop configuration. Now, these instructions are also included on the first tab of the dashboard. For those of you who are familiar with the PowerBi Gateway setup, you can also publish these dashboards to your online workspace. And that concludes the demo. Thank you for watching.